Hey there, First Baptist family, Pastor Philip here with just another quick little kind of prayer guide and then a quick devotional just to give you something to think about today as you continue to walk through this time of quarantine with everyone else, I guess, in the world, it seems like right now. But I just want to encourage you and challenge you a little bit. So we'll do what we usually do. I'll start out giving you some things to pray about. Feel free to pause the video between each one if you would like. Spend some time in prayer for that. Then you can resume the video whenever you're ready. And then at the end, we'll do a quick little devotional just to reflect on God's Word a little bit and maybe think about our own lives and how it applies to us. So let's kick into prayer. The one thing that I want to kind of focus on in prayer today is mainly people within our church, but with that, people within our community as well. So the first thing that you can be praying about is really, I think one of the most important things is for widows, widowers, or people that live alone. Obviously, quarantine and this whole stay-at-home thing has been difficult on everybody, but it's been particularly difficult on people who live by themselves. Uh, Incredible loneliness, just difficulty with knowing what they can do, what they can't do, getting out, who they can talk to. And so one of the best things we can do is just pray for them. And this one kind of comes with a challenge too, and that is pray for them. And if you know someone like that, reach out, give them a phone call. But take a few minutes and pray for maybe someone you know by name, or if you don't, just in general, that lives by themselves in this specific time. The second thing that you can be in prayer for is those in our church and in our community who are elderly or at risk, that God will continue to protect them, that He will keep them healthy through all of this, and that He will be glorified through that. The third thing third kind of category, group of people we can be in prayer for is families, especially families with small children. Of course, every parent loves their kids, um, but when you're stuck at home with nothing to do for over a month now, that can get challenging. So pray for patience for those parents. Pray that it'll be a time that they can edify and build relationships with their children, that it can be a time that they raise their children up in the faith. They teach them about the gospel and about Jesus. And those that are in our community, pray for those that maybe don't have as strong family relationships, that this will be a time to strengthen them and bring them closer together rather than pulling them apart. The fourth group to be in prayer over is essential workers, those that are still having to travel in to work, having to stock shelves or serve food or maybe work in an office. Um, Thank God that we have people like that are willing to work. Give Him thanks for that. But also, again, pray for their protection. Pray for their motivation to continue to work and to serve this community. And thank God that we have people like that. And the fifth is those who have had to file for unemployment or have lost their jobs through this. Um, Maybe they're dealing with some financial struggles. They don't know when their next paycheck's going to come or how they're going to pay their bills. They don't even know how they're going to get the next meal. And there's definitely people in our community that are feeling that way and dealing with that. So continue to pray for them, that God would be their provision, that He would be able to know them and they know Him, and would take care of them for that. So there's five things, five kind of different people that you can be in prayer for within our own church and within our own community. So hopefully you have the time to pray over that today. Now let's jump into a little bit of scripture. Haley and I, back when this whole thing started, decided we wanted to go ahead and begin a read the Bible through in a year plan. And so we've, over the last few days, been reading through kind of the beginning of Exodus and the Moses' story as the Israelites are leaving. And then there's also some Psalms and some New Testament in there as well. But I want to focus on the story in Exodus because the Bible is one of those things that every time you read it, you kind of learn something different through it. Just things that didn't stick out to you before stick out to you now. And so yesterday I was reading through the story of the 10 plagues that God brings to Egypt in order to convince Pharaoh to let the Israelites escape, to let them go free. And you know these pretty well probably. If you've been in church, you understand what those 10 plagues were. But I found something I thought was kind of interesting about the plague of hail. So let me kind of catch you up with what's been going on. Moses is he's been commissioned by God to go to Pharaoh in order that Pharaoh would let his people go, let the Israelites go. And there's this back and forth between Moses and Pharaoh, where God will, through Moses, strike Egypt with a plague. Moses will go back to Pharaoh, say, let our people go. Pharaoh says no. Another plague ensues. So when you read through this, the first one is turning the Nile to blood and causing all the fish to die. The second one is a massive frog infestation. And at the end of that one, it says that even after God stops it, there's just countless heaps of dead frogs all over the land. And there was a terrible odor. I don't even want to imagine that. Like, it would smell so bad. Then it goes into gnats, and then from gnats they deal with the plague of flies, and then there's the death of their livestock, and then boils on the people of Egypt. But the seventh one is called the plague of hail. And it's exactly what it sounds like. There's going to be this giant hailstorm that's going to rain down. But what was really interesting about this, and I'm going to kind of break it down and read it to you here in Exodus chapter 13. But what I thought was really interesting was that this is one of the few plagues that the Egyptians had the chance to respond to. With plagues like frog infestation, there's not really much of a response to that. You just go outside and frogs are everywhere. There's nothing you can do to change how that affects you. But with the plague of hail, Moses actually gives the Egyptians a day to respond in faith. And I think we see some really interesting things happen from that. So, Exodus chapter 9, verse 13. I don't know, did I say chapter 13 earlier? Chapter 9, verse 13 says this. Then the Lord said to Moses, get up early in the morning and present yourself to Pharaoh. Tell him, this is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go so that they may worship me. For this time I am about to send all my plagues against you, your officials and your people. Then you will know there is no one like me on the whole earth. So God says, right, I'm going to continue sending these plagues. You've seen my power. You're just going to see my power all the more. But we get this little aside in verse 15 that I think is pretty interesting. But by now, God says, by now I could have stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with a plague, and you would have been obliterated from the earth. And we're kind of left to wonder, right, if that's what God could have done, why didn't God do that? Why did God not just obliterate the Egyptians and set the Hebrews free? That's an option. God says it's an option. He says that's within his power to do that. We know it's within his power because he is all powerful. So why is that not God's answer? Well, he explains in verse 16. However, I have let you live for this purpose, to show you my power and to make my name known in the whole earth. So God says, I am allowing you to live. I'm allowing your nation to exist because I get the chance to demonstrate my power to you and to make my name known through you. So what we see here is we see a God that desires... Sorry, I was getting a phone call. We see a God that desires the foreigners even, that they would know him. And it's still different, of course, because his covenant's set up with the Hebrew people. But we see this consistency of a God that desires his name to be known, not just among his people, but among the entire earth. And so he says, I'm not looking to obliterate you. I'm looking for you to know my power and to know my truth. So verse 17, he says, you're still acting arrogantly against my people by not letting them go. You still think that you're more powerful than I am. So he's going to show them another way that he is more powerful. Therefore, give orders to bring your livestock and all that you have in the field into shelters. Every person and animal that is in the field not brought inside will die when the hail falls on them. I skipped a verse in verse 18. Tomorrow, this time, I will rain down the worst hail that has ever occurred from Egypt, from the day it was founded until now. So then go and give orders to your people to bring in their livestock and their servants from the field. And this is the point that you think everyone in Egypt's seen the frogs. They've dealt with the boils, the gnats, the flies. They've seen the Nile turn to blood. They know that Moses isn't joking, that this isn't just something that may or may not happen. This isn't a weather forecast that you see on KOB News. That it might snow, but probably not. This is a guaranteed thing. right? Most accurate weather forecast ever given. And Moses says, it's going to hell. Go bring the people inside. You have till tomorrow. And you would think all of them would say, yeah, of course, let's bring them in and protect them. But verse 20, we see those among Pharaoh's officials who feared the word of the Lord made their servants and livestock flee to shelters. But those who didn't take heart to the Lord's word left their servants and livestock in the field. So there were people that responded in faith and said, I believe that this is what the God of the Hebrews can do, and I want to make sure my people are protected. And there were those that even after seeing all the evidence decided, no, I'm not that interested in putting in the work. I don't believe he's that powerful. So what's going on there? And honestly, I think it's something we see even in life today. That there are countless things we've seen God accomplish in your own personal lives, just in the world around us. There's power that is just inevitably there, that is evidential. And yet it's very easy for people to respond, no, I don't think I'm that interested in following God. Well, why? Because I think we are all prone to allowing our stubbornness to overtake our faithfulness. That if we're not careful, we get stuck in our own rut, in our own way, in our own comfort, that rather than responding to God's power in a way of obedience and faithfulness, we think, no, I'm just going to keep doing it my way and expect things to work out. And what happens is, whenever we make that decision, we fall flat on our face. Because we don't have the ability to stand above the God of the universe. We don't have the ability to overpower him. We desperately need to respond in faith rather than stubbornness. And you know, as the story goes, the hailstorm still comes, and those that left their servants and livestock in the field, well, the hail killed them. It's really an incredibly sad story about the devastation of faithlessness. But here's my challenge for you through all of that. As you look back over your life and the decisions you've made and the things you've seen God do, are there times that you undeniably have seen God work? And if that's the case, is there something now that instead of holding to faithfulness, you're holding to your own stubbornness? Is there something God's calling you to? Is there something God's telling you that you're responding not out of obedience, but out of self-preservation? Because looking at this story, we see over and over again, when we hold to our own stubbornness, we will always fall short of what God has planned for us. So, there it is from Exodus chapter 9. Hold to faithfulness, not stubbornness. Till next time, go serve your King.